Alrighty. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on another episode of College Like a Titan. Today, we are talking about money and financial aid. And today, we have a special guest with us from financial aid. We have Miss Allison Blade. Good morning,
Hello.
Allison. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much. Carl, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm great. Hi, everybody. I'm Carl Yeh. And I also would like to welcome Allison, who is our Director of Financial Aid.
Hello. Nice to see you this morning.
Yes, and this morning we have a nice piece for you. We'd like to run through a series of questions for Mrs. Blade that will help students have a better understanding of financial aid and hopefully take these tips further with them on in the future. I'm going to kick it off with a simple question. We all know that we've been affected by COVID and we've had to learn how to adapt. So with COVID affecting students, talking to people in person, what has financial aid done to meet students at their level and become more accessible?
That is a great question. And I think it's been a challenge. I mean, I'm not going to say by any means we've been perfect at it. I think it's been challenging as a nation, and especially for financial aid offices where the paperwork can be cumbersome, it can be heavy. There's lots of back and forth communication that needs to happen. I think the most progress we've made and the thing that we've tried to do is still be able to have a little bit of face-to-face contact with students through our hub. And I think that it just really helps the dynamic and helps the communication when you at least get to sit down and have that conversation with somebody. Obviously, we weren't able to for a long time in person, and that was a loss for our staff too. I think that they really missed that opportunity as well. It wasn't like we wanted to not be accessible, obviously, because of safety we had to be, but we missed that. So I think that creating the hub, and that was in more student affairs, of course, than just financial aid, but creating that opportunity for students to come in and sit down, whether or not they had the camera on was their choice, but at least see a live human and talk to them about the situation, I think is an effort that we really tried to make, to be able to keep that communication flow going and have an entire conversation back and forth, as opposed to just kind of that email communication that can seem a little stale at times.
Okay, so if I'm a student, where can I go to connect with these people on the hub?
Yep. So there's a couple different ways you can find the hub. One is on our main website. The other is if you've sent an email to the financial aid email box, so finaid@lanecc.edu. At the bottom of our responses, we have all of the information on the hub, the Dropbox, and our signature line, so you can connect from it there. Those are the two main places that I'd recommend students go to find that link to click on to find us.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Can I ask a really quick follow-up question? What I was wondering, what is financial aid exactly? Because I mean, it's probably my first preferred form of aid amongst others. Like, how do you even get it, and why would I need it if I were a student?
Yeah, great question. So financial aid is a really broad term that encompasses a lot of things. So the financial aid office does multiple different forms of aid. So the one that students or employees or staff or humans really talk about the most and think they're talking about only when they say financial aid is that Title IV aid. So Title IV aid is your federal Pell Grant, your subsidized loan, your unsubsidized loan, your campus-based aid, such as Federal Work Study, Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, also known as SCOG. All of those are a part of financial aid, and that is probably the bulk and the most cumbersome part of the process. And those are the ones that you would file a FAFSA for. So why would you need aid? Because most of us aren't independently wealthy and able to pay cash for college. It's just a reality of the times, especially with the cost skyrocketing. And so obviously filing that FAFSA is the first start. It's basically your application for that federal aid. And then the financial aid office also handles state aid, such as Oregon Promise, Oregon Opportunity Grant, any of those, and then also private scholarships and public scholarships as well.
So what I'm hearing from you is like, I could have saved a bunch of money right and pay for college myself, but it's a way for me to be able to use some resources to be able to get some money to actually be granted to me, like money I don't have to pay back, or money that I can borrow at a relatively low interest rate and be able to afford college.
Correct. Yes, that's exactly what it is. Yep.
Cool.
Okay. So I see I see how we're going about this. So let me ask you this: as a student, like, what is a grant? You know, what is the difference between a loan and a grant, and what is a scholarship? Could you help me out?
Yep, that's great questions. So a grant is something that is normally a form of aid, a type of aid that comes from either the federal government, so Pell Grant, Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, SEOG, or we have the Oregon Promise Grant, or we have Oregon Opportunity Grant, anything that is state or federally funded, and you do not have to pay it back. Loans are ones that you take out normally through the federal government. That would be your subsidized, your unsubsidized, your plus loans. Sometimes people who either struggle to get those or are ineligible for those do take out educational loans through private entities such as a bank or a credit union. They are really rare, but it does happen. So that would be a loan. You pay it back. You sign what's called a master promissory note, which is your contract of terms and conditions, and that you will pay those funding back and what that will look like. And then over the course of time, on whatever negotiated rate that you have with them, is you pay back that money plus interest. And then scholarships are normally through private entities. Sometimes public entities have them too, though, nonprofits. That would be something that normally you apply for. It's a great opportunity for a pretty good return on your investment. My first financial aid director, when I started in financial aid, long time ago, we won't age me, so we won't talk about the length of time, told me, she used to use an example when she was doing entrance counseling of, if you were going to get paid $500 an hour, would you take it and take the job? And of course it was like, yeah. So if you spend 1 hour doing a scholarship application for $500, that's such a huge return on your investment. And most of the time, really scholarship applications, sometimes they take longer, but they really aren't that in depth sometimes. And so that would be what a scholarship is. You fill out an application most of the time. Sometimes you have to do a presentation, go through a little bit of process, whatever that entity decides, and then it's free money to go to school.
Okay, thank you very much. So for all the students out there listening, these are kind of like the basics. So now I'm going to come with questions from the perspective of a ongoing student. You know, I've had like 2 terms, so I'm pretty seasoned at this point. So I've got grants. I've been awarded a grant and a scholarship, right? And I received financial aid. Will this grant or scholarship affect my financial aid, specifically my Pell Grant or subsidized loan?
It's a great question. And unfortunately, a lot of times the answer in financial aid is it depends. So what I would always say is take the free money first. And in fact, we do everything we can to make that happen for you, to force that to happen for you. So you always want the Pell Grant money. You want the scholarship funds. We are required to do a really in-depth, boring calculation that's called your cost of attendance, and we can't disperse past your budget. So we have to do some behind the scenes calculations on what's federally regulated on the loan side. But the benefit is it will reduce what you have to pay back if you get enough grants and scholarships. And so it's always, always, always a wise idea to get as many of those as you can. It might negatively impact how much loans you're eligible for, but that's really good news. As someone who writes a very hefty loan check every month to the federal government, I wish I would have done more for that. And so I'm pretty passionate about recommending that. And so I highly, highly recommend that you go that route. I know it doesn't quite make sense and you're thinking, but I don't want to lose my aid. Well, you're losing the problem of trying to fit into your budget after college, how you're going to make a payment back on loans if you have that. And it's a good choice to have. So always take the scholarships and grants first.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Let's see. Well, I'm a student and I'm looking for work, right? And I find that there are work study available. So does work study affect my financial aid at all?
It might reduce the amount of loans you're eligible for. It all depends again on that calculation. But once again, it would reduce the amount that you would have to pay back in the future. And so especially if you find a work study job that works well in your schedule, it's one that you enjoy, it's something that will help you build your resume for a job down the road, then I highly recommend doing that as well and choosing work study first.
Okay. Well, bottom line is, students, go for the free money.
That's right.
Go for the free money. You can't go wrong.
Mhm.
I was going to ask you, Allison, since you mentioned paying off loans. I know one of the things that students are struggling with, many students across the country, not just at LCC, are struggling with loan payments. And the fact that they're borrowing a lot of money and having to borrow a lot of money because tuition has just increased so much more every year.
Mhm.
What do you when you talk with students about this, do you talk with them about do they bring up whether it's worth it or not to do this, and what are their worries about paying it back later? Because I know for a fact, out of all the different kinds of loans that you can get in life, the government does expect to be paid back.
Oh, yes, they do. That is a huge question and a really good one. So a couple of things. Is it worth it? I think that's another, it depends. So what I can tell you is there's kind of this misconception out there that federal student loans are a great option and the interest rate's low. It's really not. Sometimes it's 7, 8, 6%. And that's high, especially if when you get out of school, you have to defer it for whatever reason, that interest compounds. So you could easily, if you're struggling to find a job for a year or two, you could easily go from a $20,000 student loan bill to a $30,000 loan bill. The other problem is if you ignore it at all and you decide to bury your head in the sand, that continues to build and they will not stop trying to collect on you. So student loans, like you said, you can't, I know one person that's actually been able to declare bankruptcy on them, and that's out of hundreds of thousands of students. So it happens every once in a while, but the reality is it's really, 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 really rare. You cannot get away from it. There is public service loan forgiveness, and they have just redone that program. So I can actually report that it is a lot easier to become a part of. It still is up to them to decide whether or not you're eligible. It's a new process, so we don't have all the kinks worked out. There also are repayment plan options. So it's not hopeless by any stretch of the imagination, but you really need to be wise about it. I think sometimes students just think, oh, well, I need the money now that I don't have to work. I can spend more time with friends. I can do what I need to. Obviously focus on your studies. Don't hear me say that you shouldn't. You absolutely should. But if you have the ability to borrow less and get a job or try to apply for scholarships, you absolutely should, because those payments do impact you, especially when you're just starting out right after college. It's very rare that you get really good earnings your first couple of years out of college, and it takes a little bit to get on your feet, and those loans come due. So anything you can do to reduce borrowing, I highly recommend you do.
I appreciate you saying that, because I think there is a lot of pressure that we've been putting on people in general to go get more education. And it's not bad pressure. I mean, and I'm not just saying that because I work in higher education. Obviously it benefits me if more people were to go engage in higher education. But I personally see the value in it. I think it enriches people even beyond work opportunities. But I do think that students do really need to think very carefully before they start signing papers and taking out loans about how this will affect them in the future. And so building on that, I was wondering, like, are there things that students, in addition to knowing like, okay, yeah, you will have to pay this money back? Because as you said, most of us aren't independently wealthy and able to just to pay for college, with cash right up front. Are there other things that students should be thinking about when they're in college that could help them with their financial future?
I think so. I think obviously wise borrowing is key, but I also think that it's important to look at how you want to spend your money now and develop really good fiscal habits from early on. A friend of mine, actually, when she was in college, she was taking out loans, but whenever she got Christmas money or whenever she got birthday money or got a second job or, did some childcare or whatever and earned some cash on the side, she would turn right around and put that on the principal of her loans. And it really did well for her down the road, because then that interest wasn't accruing when she was out and trying to figure out how to pay it back. She was able to pay off most of it while she was in school. So you can make principal only payments while you're in school. So that's always an option that they can do. I also think too, just trying to be wise about, spending, taking out loans so you can maintain a really good lifestyle might not be the wisest choice. Sometimes you take out loans to survive, and that's a completely different discussion. But, loans for different things that may be above and beyond normally what students would have the financial ability to do is not always the best option. And so just being wise about your purchases, your choices, your budgeting There's so many tools online to be able to learn how to do a budget or how to develop good financial habits that then can help you be wiser with your borrowing.
I have a question, and this is a question on a lot of students' minds, right? Is students need money, right? And they need it more yesterday than today or this week. So I know that financial aid has always been burdened with the question, when will financial aid disbursements, begin and start, right? So my question for you is, what tips can students learn, from you about, navigating in that little tight space before their disbursements hit? Because students need books, they need supplies, they need materials, food, gas, etc. So help some students out.
Yeah, great question. There's a couple of things that you can do. One is file your FAFSA early, check your email regularly, turn in documentation immediately, ask if you have questions, do everything you can to try to be proactive so that way you don't get a delayed disbursement, because you need that money, like you said, immediately, as soon as disbursement comes, probably a month before disbursement comes, sometimes,
Right.
Especially in the fall, right?
Right.
So that would be tip number one that I would say is do all of the things that you can do up front. Once again, file your FAFSA early, check your email and your student portal regularly, ask if you have questions, be in regular communication with us, so that way your disbursement isn't delayed. Other things is, look into either work study options on campus or working in the community if you can, especially in between those a little bit longer breaks, where maybe you can earn a little bit of income on the side. The more scholarships that you get or things to add into your aid package, the more money that you'll have. I think the challenge with financial aid is you get this one check up front and you're supposed to be able to make it last 4 months. And we do that to people who, I was the same exact way when I was in college. I always worked when I was in high school, but I don't think that I ever really figured out how to manage a budget. So here I was, my first fall term in college, took out the student loans, which I probably didn't need to, but that's a different story. And then I sat there with all this money and I'm like, great, let's go out to eat and do some shopping. And then all of a sudden it, was October and I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do, for the next 3 months? So I think anything you can do to help yourself, whatever works for your specific situation, to budget and to manage your finances. Maybe you have a trusted parent that has a savings account that could hold it for you and give you certain weekly allowances or months or something like that. That might not be an option for you. It's just a suggestion. But I know, you can get creative with how to make that last throughout those times. And then the other thing is to plan ahead for breaks. So for your summer break, if you're not going to take classes, or the time in between, Christmas break as well, for those in between, whether or not you can get a job, whether you could do some babysitting, just kind of get creative on how you could either get some additional income during that time or try to put some aside in a way that works for you, so it doesn't come as a surprise when you get to that point and you need the help financially.
Okay, and to be certain, right? So as far as that in-between space of disbursement, right? You want students to start thinking about a budget, creating a little nest egg, and so let's say I buy a book, right? And some supplies with my money, right? Community work study, scholarship, etc. Are there any benefits? Like maybe if I bought a brand new book, I could I don't know, write it off on my taxes?
No, sorry. I wish I don't believe so. Now I've never been asked that question, nor have I ever researched it. So I'm not a CPA. Let me be the first to say that. So I'm happy to check on that, but I don't think that in itself, I don't know. You know what? I have to say that I would need to do a little bit of research on that specific part of it. Whether or not
that would be a good episode for the future. I do know there are education expenses that you
For
can
sure.
count on your taxes, but that's a complicated thing. We should probably invite a CPA to do
Yeah.
that
Next
very
time.
thing.
Yeah, I don't want that one, unfortunately. I just don't know enough. I'm sorry.
In addition, I think the term budgeting has come up, and I do think that's important. I think also spending strategies are important too, because you can't I would love to meet a person who can go through life without spending anything. But so I think it is important to have some idea about how you do that, because I think strategic spending is just as important as knowing how you're allocating your money to different things in your life. But if I may, D'Ante, I would like to engage in what first time ever on this show, a lightning round, where I will say a word or phrase, and Allison has to say her response quickly, so you can't pause too long when I do this, and we'll see if something interesting happens.
All right.
Okay, you ready?
Right.
We'll put something on the clock, but we're not that fancy of a show. So ready? Here we go. First word, FAFSA.
File it ASAP.
Credit card.
No, don't get one.
I'd like to know. Debit card.
Get one, but monitor your expenses and make sure you have money before using it.
I feel like you practiced. Did you know what I was going to ask you?
No, I've just lived the nightmare.
That's good. Okay. Now I'm going to keep it going. So let's see what happens. Family contribution.
If you have it, that's great.
Oh. Checking account.
Make sure you get one that has 0 fees.
Oh. Scholarship.
Good. Do it. Apply lots.
Bitcoin.
Not enough time in my day to know.
Okay. That's fair. Compound interest.
Never a good idea if you can avoid it.
I love
Treat yourself.
Do it.
Park and Rec.
For a walk or something that doesn't cost money if you can.
Okay. And finally, debt forgiveness.
Is a great idea in theory. And if you need help, ask.
Is there anything that we touched on? I have to say, I'm very impressed. Everything you said.
I'm thoroughly impressed.
Because the intent was, the 50% of the intent was to get you to say, I wanted you to say some of those wise things that you did say. But the other 50% was trying to trip you up and see if you say something kind of weird or crazy. So you did a good job.
You passed with flying colors.
I was wondering, was there anything that you had said that you would like to expand on? And I can repeat any of the words I asked you.
Well, I think, you ask about the credit cards and the debit cards and the checking account. So a little bit of, personal finance 101. And I'm not an expert by any means. I wish I was, but I'm not. My husband probably wishes I was too. So, credit cards, they're not terrible. I know I said that, but the reality is it's a really easy way to have instant gratification of buying what you want and getting yourself in some trouble. And I think that we've just made it too easy as a culture to be able to do that. Sometimes you have to use them to survive, and that's okay, but just be really, really wise and check your interest rate. If you cannot pay it back right away and you have a maximum interest rate of like 29%, I've just watched people just be so stressed and overwhelmed in their life because of that crushing debt and that feeling of I'll never get out from under this. So I like to impress upon people to be wise. The checking account one, the other thing I'd say about that real quick is, shop around. I don't know. Everybody has different experiences. This is just the opinion of Allison Blade. This is not the opinion of Lane Community College. So I'm gonna get that out there right now. This is my personal opinion. Yeah. I'm a proponent for credit unions. I think that I've had really good experiences with them because sometimes they are easy to use. You get some dividends back for actually, banking there, and sometimes they have less fees associated than some of the big banks.
Very cool. One thing I was going to ask you more about was the compound interest thing. And I've always thought compound interest, hits you both ways. One is especially for loans. And I think that's where you were going to, are very bad to have compound interest there. But, savings accounts and some other things have compound interest. Can you tell us more about how that could be good?
Yeah. So you just saw into my negative critical thinking, right? I always go to the negative side first. So you're right. It's not when it works for you, it works great. So, if you have the ability to start a savings account or some sort of investment account, or whatever that type of investment looks like for you, then compound interest is a beautiful thing. And it really, really helps. And you get a great deal on it. But I think it comes down to knowing what you're doing and knowing where you need that money, and kind of making wise choices and doing a lot of research.
I just realized, our audience may not know what a compound interest is. Could you explain that really quickly?
I think you do a great job at that, Carl. Why don't you?
Okay, I can't. So depending on whether you have a lot of money or a lot of debt, it doesn't, it can work either way, like we just said. Once you have that amount and you get interest, that increases the overall amount. And so then when interest is computed again, you're doing it on that higher amount. And again, if you're paying off a debt, that means you owe more money. And if you're saving the money, then you get even more money. And as time is your friend or enemy, depending on if it's a loan or if it's a savings account, the more time you wait, the more money you will have, which is why, probably the best financial strategy is to build a time machine, go back in time, open a savings account for $2, like 500 years ago, and then see what happens.
Great explanation.
Yep. Yeah. With a time machine, I think is what really sealed the deal on that one.
Absolutely. If you invent that, please don't forget about me.
Right.
Yeah, you too.
I'll make you if I invent a time machine, I'll put you as a co-account holder on that said account.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Are we at time?
I think we are at time. I think that's all for the day. Well, Ms. Blade, we appreciate you coming into our show and just being very insightful for all of our Titans out here listening and watching. And thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me anytime.
You're welcome. Thanks again, Allison.
Yep, no problem. Take care, everybody.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
have a great day.